right, got a few of us here. Good. So we've got Blake, Cassie, Hannah, Tyson, yes, Matt. Okay. Yeah, we've got some more folks joining us. Blake and Heath, Luke. Good. Welcome aboard, everybody. As I had put in your invitation, excuse me, I had set up the meeting to start at about 11:15, so we're about on time. Now, listen, if you have to go on to another class, all right, and you need to leave, if you're here or you're online, you need to jump off, go ahead, because I'm going to record the whole thing, and then I'll post it as usual over in the announcements in a YouTube video. So you're not going to miss anything if you have to leave early. I understand it's chapel and all that business, and I do appreciate you working through. This has been a strange, kind of different semester so far, to say the least. Okay, I want to go back over here and take a look. I had posted a video. Let me pop into the course here, and I had posted a video for a course introduction and covered some of that material. And let me just clue in here really, and I do want to apologize to you. I've been to Phoenix, Arizona twice the past 10 days, and so it's all been a blur. So I have been running and going. So let's take a look. I want to see what I have recorded for you. Okay, the screencast, that was September 4th. And I did the class that we did, the class intro as well. That was the pre-recorded session for the 26th, and then today, of course, is the 28th. Well, let's go over to if you should be logged into Canvas, and remember, in order to be counted officially as having attended class, you must log into Canvas, okay? And those of you who had classes with me before know that to be the case. You should have looked at the intro syllabus so you know where we are and so forth. And if you've had the books, etc., and if you've had classes with me, you know I work through modules. And the approach I take with my classes is this. I really believe that the best thing I can do is to have you walk through the experience of working with some of these problems, and that's why I take a workshop approach. I don't do it to make it an easy course. I do it because I know from experience that the only way you kind of understand this is if you actually do some of it. So I try to take these, I do take the cases that we do at the front end of the course, and then at the back end when I have you do some projects, then that gives you an opportunity to use some of the skills that we've worked on. And it also gives me an opportunity as I work through these in a workshop format to not focus so much upon, gee, how do I work with Solver? There's plenty of documentation on that in your textbook, as well as stuff out online, but more and why are we doing this, so that you understand the process of management science and understand the philosophy that's behind it. And you'll hear me say that over and over and over, because it's an approach to decision making. And if you really want to see the course in a nutshell, you want to go over to the big textbook and take a look at chapter 1, and you'll see as they talk about management science and that approach of problem solving versus decision making. And then as they walk you through that very first case where you use the goal seek to try and figure and to work with a problem in terms of a total cost problem, and working through trying to generate, well, how many of these units do I need to sell to break even? How many do I need to sell to have a profit, etc.? And the goal seek is one of the first of what they call is one of those scenario tools. So let me pop this open here for a moment, and we're here still at module 1. You have a couple of quizzes over the Anderson text. Those are due the 30th, okay? And then the Nolan plastics, that one's due on the 30th. And that's in the student, there are student files from the Anderson text. That's where you'll find the Nolan Plastics case. Let me open it up for just a moment and we'll talk for a second. And here is where we could see what I'm trying to kind of begin to walk us into. Now, when we talk about optimization, we're talking about what's the best decision I can make. Excuse me, let me close the door. I'm going to make Dr. Rubach mad. What's the best decision I can make given the resources that I have to work with, okay? And I don't care what type of management problem it is. I don't care what arena it's in. This is a way of thinking and a philosophy of management that I think is superior to others, where you engage in a lot of guesswork or you engage in a lot of trying to fly by the seat of your pants, to be honest with you. Because if you follow chapter 1 and then also as well as chapter 2, you'll see that there's a discipline required for management and a discipline required for a company to have an approach to the problem. So as we go through these apartments, we go through these problems and we find an objective function. And then we determine what are the variables that we need to change. And then we say, okay, what are the constraints we're operating under? Then you've walked through literally that process of problem solving, and then it becomes a question of, okay, what decision are we going to make? And you'll hear me say this over and over and over until you get tired of hearing it. And what you're going to see as we go through the course is that this is a remarkable tool and approach that lends itself to it lends itself to every management function and every type of problem imaginable. Now, to just give you some historical context, management science, in some quarters also known as operations research or operations science, in some quarters it's considered part of what we would call logistics and quantitative management. But this approach is designed or roughly follows the scientific approach, where we try to identify a problem, okay? And we try to identify the variables connected to that problem. And then we try to say, okay, can we manipulate the variables? And if we manipulate them, what type of result do we get? What we're really doing here, and I'm going to use some fancy language, okay, is what we're doing are field experiments, okay, and basically saying, okay, if I raise my price, then what types of results will I get if I have a certain cost structure? You know, when I was flying home last night, I just started thinking about when we went into Phoenix Sky Harbor, my wife and I was looking around, and I just thought, this is incredible. All of the technology, all of the people, all these hundreds of flights coming in and out, landing precisely where they're supposed to, the rental car people, all of that, and amazing. And those things wouldn't be possible if we had not had some of the challenges that we've had, particularly through military operations. And some of this started, and I'll just give you some background, and I think it's good for you sometimes to get some historic background in business because it helps you put it in context. Really, the first modern war ever fought was the Civil War. And during that war, the North used the railroad systems and their munitions factories extensively. And basically, although the South had the better generals and probably the better soldiers, the North won because they had logistics and they had numbers and they had the ability and capacity just to produce all of the weapons they needed and then some. But it was their use of the rail networks and their understanding of logistics that really was what won the war. And then we saw that in the First World War, but it really became important in the Second World War. And many of the techniques that we're going to be using and working with, especially and including optimization, were pioneered by people in Great Britain, the scientists and the mathematicians there, who really kind of became the brain power of how do we. The president this morning, he mentioned the D-Day invasion. Hundreds of thousands of people, I think 150,000 troops landed within 2 hours, 13,000 aircraft, I don't know how many ships, all of that concentrated in the English Channel, which is in Normandy, which was a very concentrated area. That had to all work to an incredible amount of precision. And so the British kind of took that over. The United States, we spent most of our brain power and resources trying to figure out how to build the A-bomb. And so the Allies divided those things up. That's some history, but it helps you kind of understand business. And then over time, as the global economy has emerged, and as the United States at the end of the World War started to try to build the international economy again, and as that has all emerged, these tools are exceptionally important. And they're really what make things go. And I always say I will say this again, there are tremendous opportunities for all of you if you would choose to look at a job in logistics. And if two of the great companies in that are FedEx and UPS, both incredible companies. And then just so many smaller firms. It doesn't matter how good Amazon's website is, if they don't get it delivered to you on time and in the condition you want, it's a waste, just a complete waste. So we'll give you a bit of background. Let's look at this problem here, and we have this company, Nolan Plastics, and we'll just talk about it very quickly. And it's covered there in pages 14 to 16 and then 26 to 29 of the text. But what I ask you to do is to use GoalSeek to change the selling price per unit to get a total profit of $5,000. So what we're working with there is break-even analysis, okay? And we understand that total cost is fixed costs plus variable costs. The profit is the revenue minus total costs. We also know the contribution margin, okay, is what's left over after we pay the fixed costs. And then we can do that in units or in dollars, okay? So I ask you to work with Nolan Plastics and work through that problem. And let me pop over here to Vital Source, and I'll go down over to our text. Here it is. And we're back over here to, I want to go to page, let's do Nolan. Okay, yep, table, in the book, pardon me. I want to search the book for Nolan Plastics. Let's see if he'll be nice to me today. Okay, and there we are, we talked about that. And we started here, and we'll just go at this here in page 14, where we look at break-even analysis. You remember that from Econ? Probably, and I know we talked about 1123. Okay, and they work us through those profit and volume models. One of the key things that we do in management science is we work with a model, and the textbook talks about we have iconic models. Those are a scaled model. We have a scaled model. We have iconic models like a flow chart. But really the best are mathematical models, because then we can literally say, okay, well, if I change this variable or that variable, how does everything work itself through? And the authors work us through the issue of the break-even analysis, okay, where they have the price times the number of units, okay, and that equals the fixed costs, okay, plus the variable costs, and there we have that break-even point. And so if we sell 500 units, they're showing us that we're going to be below there. And so we're trying to figure out how do we get to break-even point And how do we do that? Now, they show us a graphic model. In the text, the authors are going to spend a lot of time as we go through these cases showing you the linear algebra and charting it for you. Now, the linear algebra is great, and if you really want to sit down and do it, fine. But the chart is there for a reason. It saves you as a decision maker the time from doing it. It's a dashboard, and when you're out at work, you're going to see dashboards. You'll hear me talk about this a lot, charts and things that will show you usually current conditions, maybe historical conditions, and then there will be those few that are interactive in nature, and that will show you how things can work or might work. And if you look here, you'll see, if you look at that total cost, I'm on figure 1.6, the break even analysis for Nolan Plastics, okay? And what we have to do to break even, and then what we have to do move into the profit range, or where we are in the loss range. And notice the fixed costs are those that stay the same. The variable costs are those which change with the number of units that we're working with, okay? And so this is just kind of a simple problem. And I'm going to go back here for a moment to the module. And let me say this, any of you are here or are out there, if you have a question, stop me, and because I can start rolling, and you might have a question I might roll over. Anybody have a question? So far, so good. Okay, let's open up the key for Nolan Plastics, and I'm gonna unhide it. Let me go back here for a moment and get it up here. Okay, and that's what you'll want to upload for the Nolan Plastics credit, okay? And let's look at it. I'll talk some about it. Now, I'd ask you to, I'm going to download it, and you'll want to download it to your desktop, okay? And then, excuse me, you'll want to upload it. You'll want to probably download it to your desktop, rename it, like put your name on it, and then load it back in for the credit part. So I'm going to download this thing, and I'm going to show it in the folder. This is just how I do it. And then we'll get the Nolan key, and we'll open it up. Now, as I had mentioned, I'll get this enabled, the editing here. There are two pieces of Excel that walk us from some contingency analysis all the way to optimization. Now, if you don't have it on your computer, here's how you do it. You click on File, then you go down to Options, okay? You'll click Add-ins, and you'll see the active add-ins in your computer. And you should have the analysis tool pack, which will include the solver. So if you don't have solver on there, you'll click on that from you see the inactive section here, okay? And you'll click on that, and then the analysis tool pack should open up, and you'll want to choose the statistics package and the solver. Anybody here not with me so far? Everybody okay, I assume. Got it? Yeah, pretty simple. Now, let's close this off. Now, if you click on the Data tab, you'll see that we move into two pieces of this. One is the analysis, and that's the data analysis package. It's got all the typical statistics, population summary statistics, and then some non-parametric statistics, those that we don't assume have a normal distribution. The stat pack in Excel is very nice. There are some out there that are far more powerful, but as a business person, and I'd say most business managers, if they crunch numbers, probably use Excel and probably use the stat pack. If they use a commercial product, it's usually going to be SAS, SAP, or Oracle, one of those three. Now, if you take a look here, you'll see this what-if analysis, and this is where we do some forecasting. You know, and click on here, and you'll see that we have three of them. One is the scenario manager, okay, and you've worked with that, and that's where we take series of figures or variables and change them. We use the scenario manager back in BIS 1123, business problem analysis, where we took several prices and changed them just to see if we do that, what do things look like? And then we also did the data table, which is a lot like a product table. And we did, in that one, we did a, we took various interest rates versus various rates of return in terms of cash on a time value of money, and we computed a profitability index. So it's nothing new, but the goal seek is just the simplest one. Let's click on it for just a moment. And what you'll get from the goal seek is this. You'll get the cell that you want to set, that's your goal. Then you put in the value, and then you put in the cell that you're going to change. It's the simplest one, but let me say this. When I work through a problem, I start with, if I can, I start with goal seek, and then I'll work through the scenario manager, and then I'll work up to the optimization tool, the optimizer, and I do that just to. I might take what I think is a key variable and start with the goal seek, and then some key variables and work with scenario manager. And then if I'm really ready to do it and I have the data, I'll work through the optimization tool. But this is just a simple exercise, but again, it's just to kind of make sure that you can get the solver loaded, and then also that you're aware of this tool. It's a simple tool, but a powerful one, because it does let you play around with different outcomes. And so here, if you take a look, and the problem that I've got here for you, okay, and I'll move this over here, is I want to know how many units we need to produce, okay? I'm just going to cancel for a second so I can move this on up. The fixed costs necessary to achieve a break even, okay? Fixed costs are those costs that stay the same. And those are the first ones when we do an analysis to say, am I fixed cost heavy? When I was leaving yesterday, I took a look as we were getting ready to board the plane, and it was interesting because our flight was about 3/4 full. Another flight had less than 50 people in it, but they didn't cancel the flight. Why? Because the airline industry has such a high fixed cost structure that they might as well fly with 50 as a full plane. It costs them basically the same amount of money to fly from Phoenix to wherever it was as it would to fly to Phoenix to Oklahoma City with a plane that was about 3/4 full, and then a plane to Orange County, which was maxed out totally. The weight of the people is pretty minimal in their equations. It's the plane, the fuel, the landing rights, etc. So we've got this problem, and I just said use the goal seek to obtain the fixed costs necessary to achieve break even, okay? So we're going to come up here, all right, and I'm going to start with the goal seek. I'll click on the what if analysis, all right, and I want to, let me move this back here out of the way for a second, and we want to know the fixed costs necessary to get break even. Well, okay, I want to break even, which means the total profit or loss, okay, that would be 0. Okay, and I'm going to change the fixed cost figure, and I'll just click OK, and boom, and it's done. Pretty easy. So if we produce, okay, if we produce 800 units, we break even. Well, if you've worked with the total cost, in econ, you probably worked with total cost and some other, maybe you should have in intro to finance, and certainly in business problem analysis, and you know total cost was fixed costs. Fixed cost plus variable cost, equals your total cost. So here I am. My fixed costs are 8,000. Okay. The variable costs are those which change by the number of units produced. And I have $2 variable cost per unit. So if I produce, say, 100 of the units, then what's my variable cost? Anybody want to tell me? I have 800 units I produce at $2, so my variable costs are how much? Anybody? What's 2 times 800?
1,600.
Thank you very much. That was a voice. That was very impressive. 1,600, exactly. So we've got variable costs of 1,600. We've got fixed costs of 8,000. So the total costs are 9,600. Okay, fixed costs of 8,000. Pardon me. And so our revenue is 9,600. So our total profit or loss, that's at break even. Okay. Now, if I were wanting to know, well, how many units would I need to sell? Okay. For example, to make $1,000. Well, let's try that. Okay. So I'm going to click what if analysis. I'll click the goal seek. Okay. And I'm going to, my goal is right here. Okay. And I want to make $1,000. And I want to know how many units do I need to produce, i.e. how many do I need to sell? And we'll click OK. And there we go. So now I know if I want to make $1,000, if I want to make $1,000 in profit, I have to make 900 units. You say, okay, where are we going with this? Well, here's where we're going with it is the marginal utility of each additional unit above 8,000 is pretty simple. I take 1,000, divide it by 900, okay? And whatever that is, like 1.10 or something, 1.11. And so for every additional unit, I make another dollar, I make an additional dollar of profit. So at beyond 800 units, I'm moving into a profit territory. If I know that 800 is break-even point, then anything less than 800 is going to be at a loss. Does that make sense? Should I go back in, or is everybody following me so far? Now you're sitting here, I know, and you're going, it can't be this easy. It truly is. It truly, truly is. And that's the thing that amazes me is that, what amazes me is particularly larger companies that often it's like they forgot they took econ, or they forgot they took finance, and they forgot about the total cost equation. And it works everywhere. It works here. It works all over the world. It's what it is. And so this just simple tool, it lets us do a forecast to say, okay, and you say, Dr. Harmon, a minute ago, you're talking about the marginal utilities. Well, let's do this. I said, okay, I'm good there. And I'm going to take this equals, this is the total profit, okay? And I'm going to divide that by production volume, and boom. And I'll go ahead and go back home here for just a sec, and I'll add the decimals out. And I was right, about $1.11. So every additional so at the 801st unit, 802, 803, beyond that, to $1,000 profit, I'm making an extra dollar. So is it worth it for me? If I know break even, then I know if it's worth it for me to do another 100 units if I can, or another 200 units if I can. You notice I said if I can. The if part is where we start to move into working with using the optimizer. But that's the solution for that Nolan Plastics, okay? And it's a simple case, but often embedded in these simple cases is a lot of truth for us to remember. Once you know break even, and again, that's back over there in the text. Once you understand break even, you know where to go from there. I would say that 99.9% of you who ever come through here and take this course with me will never be the one crunching the number or producing the table. You'll be the one looking at the table, and it will be up to you to say, okay, and this could be a production volume of, a production volume of, I don't know, 25 million units, who knows? But if you have these data and they're accurate, then it's up to you to start to ask yourself, can I make more of this? You also may have to ask yourself, can I make less of this? And so as we move on through the course and we get into some of what we would call the load balancing questions or load balancing problems, you'll understand what I mean. I'm going to stop for a second. Anybody have any questions? So far, so good? I hope you're not just like one of these dolls in the back of somebody's car and on your heads going, oh, yeah, but you really don't understand. I'm assuming you will. You folk are pretty smart people, so I think this case should not pose a significant challenge to you at all. So we started off just with this very simple case of working with the Nolan Plastics case, okay? And I want to take just a second and let's move on down. And I want to, again, reinforce with you that there are some tools out there for you to use. I have some links to the Easy Excel Solver, and then the Excel Solver GRG on nonlinear, evolutionary. What in the world are you talking about with those? Okay. Well, when we use one of those two, there are actually 3 models that we can use. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to open up, I'm going to go back to the Excel sheet we had open, and I'm going to click on the data tab. Okay. And I should have the solver. Everybody see your solver in the far right? Got it? Click on that. And you're going to see the solver parameters. Now, in the olden days, you got a slide rule and you did this by hand. I am one of those people who falls on my knees and says, I am not worthy when I see this tool. But let's start with and walk through it. Here we see it says set the objective. I choose, once I've built my model, okay, my objective function, okay? And that objective function is going to be one of 3 types. I'm going to maximize, minimize, or find a target value. All right? So I've said, okay, what's my objective function? Fancy way of saying what's the answer I want? And then I say, what am I doing? Am I maximizing profit? Am I minimizing costs? Or am I trying to reach a value of, say, $1,000 of profit? So far, so good. Now, as we move on down through Solver to the dialog box, you'll see by changing variable cells, these are the cells that we're going to manipulate. These are the values or the functions. Again, those of you, if you need to bug out, I understand. I'll finish recording this and I'll post it at YouTube because I know we started late, etc. Now, so the changing variable cells, those are the variables that are important to the problem I'm trying to work through, and I'm going to change them. And then you see this part where I subject them to some constraints. Then we finally come down to this fourth part, and we have some options. You'll notice that you have the GRG nonlinear. What this means is the solution is not linear in nature. In other words, it doesn't look like a linear trend line. It's curvilinear. It'll be concave or convex. Problems that are like that will be marginal revenue, marginal cost. They'll tend to look like an arc or a cup. And then we'll have those that are linear. And that's when we use what we call the simplex LP. And we're working with a simple linear equation, or evolutionary, where we're not quite sure how what we call the answer space or the solution space will be distributed. We don't know. Okay? Well, I'm going to close this off for just a second, and I'm going to close the Nolan key off. So we've worked with it. Okay? And we'll take a look at what's going to be coming up next week. All right? And next week, I'm going to have a problem for you, PAR Inc., and then a couple of, then a case M&D chemicals, and in those, we're going to begin to work through using the optimizer. Okay? Now, here in chapter 1, they begin to introduce us to linear programming and integer linear programming and distribution and network models, and this whole range of management science techniques. And you're going to see those. Okay? PERT, CPM, some of those will do, the analytic hierarchy process will use those, but not all of them. So we've done basically what I wanted to get accomplished today, and then we've done the screencast for today. So, and this is Wednesday. Now, as far as I recall, okay, we don't have class on Monday. Obviously, it's Labor Day. So what do you say? What do I have to do? Just get me back, Dr. Harmon, kind of get me back into the fold and so on. Here's what you have. Anderson, chapter 1 and chapter 2, those are due on the 30th. Nolan Plastics, we just went through that. That's due on the 30th. And I would encourage you to go ahead and play around with the goal seek a little bit, okay? You could also play around some with the scenario manager. You're not going to break it. And I have the key visible for you so you don't have to get terrified that you won't get the 15 points. You'll get the 15 points. I'm doing this so I can encourage you to go beyond just turning in the problem and saying, well, what if I changed this, or what if I changed that? Working with that very simple Nolan plastic problem. You could use the scenario manager. You could use the goal seek and start to say, okay, I can look at these problems in a multiple or a variety of ways. See, with the goal seek, I can work through the profit I want to make, the fixed costs, etc. With scenario manager, that broadens even more, and we've used it before, what I could do. Well, listen, I do appreciate you folks. Thank you so much for hanging in here. This has been, I know, a strange start to the semester. It's been a little bit weird because we had class on the 22nd, then I had to be out in Arizona on the 26th. I'm here today, and we don't have class on Monday, but we'll have a class on Wednesday. And let me say this about the hybrid model, okay? Again, I really want you here both days, okay, if you can be here. But if you can't, then I understand that. Now, typically on Wednesday, some Wednesdays I'll be here and some Wednesdays I won't. It's just frankly going to depend on my schedule and what I'm doing with some of the community work that I do out there. Primarily now it's for some of our churches, okay? So it will depend on that. But normally I'll be doing a live screencast. And again, make sure you log in. And that's how I know that you attended the class. Those of you who've remained, thank you so much. And I will see all of you online or see you maybe here next week. I'm going to look at my schedule and see. But I will have a screencast for us for, we'll have a screencast on next Wednesday, which will be, let me pop this up. August, let's see, Monday. All righty, today. And so next week, Wednesday would be Wednesday the 4th of September. Okay? If you go out of town, you do something on for your weekend, please be safe. We look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot, folks, and I'm going to wrap this thing up.